And I just want y'all to know, Faith, her name is right, she is faithful to her husband, right? I mean, to the point where she even wore her prison outfit tonight to support you. I guess you are faithful, right? Okay. What about a mic, James?
You can get mine there.
Right there. Yep. All right. So, Todd, the floor is yours. You share with us, and at the end, I'm sure there may be some people that have some questions. So, you want to see it or stand? Okay.
First and foremost, I just want to thank everyone for the prayers, for the encouragement. I told Faith, I said, I believe this was a situation where people, oftentimes myself included, would say, I'll be praying for you, and walk about and go about your business and never really revisit that topic. But I do believe this was a situation that brought people to prayer. And I'm thankful for that. You'll have to excuse me, I do get emotional. But thank you so much for those that prayed, encouraged, that reached out to my wife, that tracked her locations. Those things meant a lot, because this was just as difficult for her as it was for me, and sometimes more so. I mean, she really had no information about what was going on, where I was, or what to expect. You guys know in the Bible, in Jeremiah and in the Psalms, it talks about that God knew us before we were born. And it also talks about that he knitted us together in our mother's womb. I personally believe that knitting process continues even after we're born. And my faith journey did not start until late in my life, even though I was exposed to church. I was in church a majority of my life when I was in Alabama. And I'm not going to bore you guys, because a lot of people know, like I say a lot of times, God likes me on my knees, because he puts me in situations where I don't have a choice but to get on my knees. So I'm not going to bore you with a lot of the details, but I think they're very pertinent to this journey, to explain some of the knitting process in my life. So 15 years ago, I went to treatment for addiction to prescription pain medication. And I say that lightly, but not lightly to the point of how much of a struggle it was for me. I tried everything I knew to stop using drugs. Tried everything. Counselors, medication, a lot of other things, and I just could not quit. I went to the altar. I did what the church told us to do. I had friends come to my house. They prayed over me. They anointed me with oil, and I still got up, and I could not stop. There was a 2-year period of time in there that I started hearing this still small voice in my spirit. And that voice kept saying the same thing over and over again. And it was, I gave you my life. Why can't you give me 28 days? Well, I knew what that meant. It's why couldn't I go to treatment? Well, I didn't want to go to treatment because then everybody would know that I was just a fraud, that I was really just a drug addict. And pride prevented me from that. I had a beautiful wife, 2 beautiful kids, house on Broad Street, BMW in the driveway. And it got to the point where I was leaving a friend's house one day out in Bertha. I realized I couldn't capture the ease and comfort that the medication had given me. And I couldn't be comfortable on them, and I couldn't be comfortable off of them. And I was driving down that road towards Angie and Lee's house, and I had this thought. I'm going to go home. I'm going to lay out that old blue tarp that's out by the side of the road, and I'm going to take it in the backyard and put that 6-hour 9mm in my mouth. The only reason I didn't do that is because I knew that my boys would be the one that found me in the backyard. And I couldn't bring myself to that. So on October the 28th, 2008, my wife, again, in the sidelines, but an expression of strength and hope. Delivered me to Bradford in Warrior, Alabama. And I tell people all the time, I share my story a lot. I didn't go to treatment to find God. I didn't go for 12 steps, AA or NA. I just wanted some help. But on November the 7th, 2008, at 5:50 in the morning, in a cottage all by myself, I had a personal encounter with the Lord Jesus Christ. And I say that to say that I was not in this room by myself. I had a spiritual experience where Christ became real. And it confirmed to me that the Bible was real, that everything my grandparents had been telling me was true. The scales were removed, and my life was changed. But God then began to show up in my life in ways that were just so unique that the word coincidence has been removed from my vocabulary. There is no such thing as coincidence. While I was in Bradford, they told me that we went to outside meetings, and they told me I needed to get a temporary sponsor, someone that would guide me and coach me in the recovery program. And I struggled with that because I did all these meetings. They told me to find somebody that I connected with, and I just never could connect with anybody. And so I asked this lady, one of the counselors, I said, do I just need a warm body, somebody, just somebody? And she said, yeah, you go to a meeting tonight, you get 2 phone numbers, and you call them the next day. So that night I went to a meeting in Vestavia. There was 100 people in this room. All these hands went up about people that are willing to be sponsors. And I still didn't find anybody. So I walked up to the guy that's chairing the meeting, and I said, look, I'm at Bradford. I need a temporary sponsor. Do you have a list of phone numbers? And he said, yeah. He said, matter of fact, I'll be your temporary sponsor. Okay, guys, we're in Birmingham, Alabama in November. And I noticed he's wearing a Breckenridge, Colorado ski hat, just a baseball cap. Not a big deal, except I opened up my jacket, and I had on the exact same T-shirt. For me, that was confirmation of God saying, you're on the right track. You're doing the right thing. And I needed that. I needed those moments where God confirmed to me I was on the right track. I got out of Bradford January the 9th, 2009, and came home, went through the same routine. I started going to meetings. I went to a meeting in Dothan right away. Same situation. I go up to this girl at the end of the meeting and said, I need a sponsor. Do you know of anybody? Well, she hands me a business card with all these names on it, and she circles this name and says, I think he'll be good for you. And he wasn't at the meeting, so I went home with that card and this guy's phone number, and I was like, I don't want to call some stranger. I don't want to call somebody I don't even know. Well, the next morning I wake up and we have this daily devotion in Narcotics Anonymous and in recovery, and the name of this book is Just for Today. And basically it's telling us that all that matters is today, what you do today, just for today. Well, I have this card with this guy's phone number on it, and she's telling me I need to call him. Well, the title of that talk, or the devotion for that day, was titled, Make the Call. I'm slow, but I'm not that slow. I picked up the phone, I called that number, and this guy was my sponsor for 10 years. And he saved my life in a lot of respects. He coached me through the 12 steps. And for y'all that don't know it, it's a spiritual pathway. It's biblical. It's just fed to people in a different way that may not ever grace the doors of a church, but they're getting fed unto a spiritual program. So those are the things I kind of wanted to share with you, that when God started removing that word coincidence from my vocabulary. And to be honest with you guys, I started looking. I started listening. That if I was talking to somebody, I listened to God speak, because oftentimes he speaks to me through other people. And sometimes that person is the guy that's just fresh off of a bender, that's still drunk, that still smells like alcohol, but God will use that person to speak to my spirit. And so I just started paying attention. My grandmother passed away probably 5 years ago in May. And she was a strong influence in my life. She was a godly woman, and I missed her greatly. And so I'm walking down the driveway the day of her funeral, and I said, God, it would be great. Butterflies were her thing. Her real estate company, her logo was the butterfly. That was her, the yellow monarch butterfly, that was her. And I said, God, it would be great to see a butterfly today just to let me know she's okay. I didn't even know if it was the time of year for butterflies, but that was what was coming out of my spirit. Well, I went through the day and I never saw a butterfly. But that night at the kitchen table, the whole family's around and we're going through photographs and pictures and it's, you know, and I'm actually standing at the spot on the table where the trash pile was there. Whereas, oh, whose house is that? We don't know. Throw it in the trash. What is this? Throw it in the trash. So I'm standing there in front of the trash pile, and all of a sudden someone throws down in front of me a picture with nothing on this picture, you guys, except for 2 butterflies. I picked up the picture. I walked over to my wife, and I pulled her aside. And I did that, and I shared with her. And unfortunately, I did that because a lot of my family there is not saved. And I don't think they would have got it. But my wife, she got it. We left that next day after the funeral on a 7-day cruise with Bruce and Lindsay Andrews. And I was so excited about it that I shared it with Bruce and Lindsay because they are of like faith. And you guys, for the next 7 days on that cruise, we saw butterflies. Lindsay and Bruce would come back from an excursion and say, guess what we saw? A lady would walk by me on the beach and she had nothing but butterflies down her legs. And it was just every day. So on the way home from Orlando, we're in the car for 7 hours. And I thought I talked to God. I was like, God, how are you going to show me a butterfly today? We're in the car for 7 hours. Within 2, 3, 4 miles, I look over and I tap Faith, and a car had just passed us, so I sped up and got it. And there's a little obscure butterfly on the back of the bumper. Yeah, you may chalk it up as coincidence. I don't. I think, friends of mine at Asbury, Terry Jackson, I always call them God winks. I need that in my life. I need to know that God is present. I have another friend on the similar faith journey as me that called me one day and said he was leaving a restaurant, and he'd been having this internal dialogue with God and himself about what we often all go through is, God, are you there? I don't feel your presence. Am I on the right track? Am I doing the right thing? And so that was his conversation with God in the restaurant. And he left the restaurant, and he said as he walked outside, there was a feather that was floating and spiraling in a circle in front of him. And so he said, that's pretty cool, except that the feather followed him all the way to the car, spiraling in front of him. And he said it was in the parking lot. It wasn't just like I just got in my car. It was a walk, enough that wow, this is pretty cool. So he gets to his car, and the feather finally settles to the ground. He actually takes a picture of it and sends it to me. And we have that conversation. And that's what I love about having faith people in my life, is I get to have those conversations that people don't look at me and go, okay. So the butterfly was significant to me. The feather was significant to my friend. And he shared it with me, and we enjoy those moments that God really just reveals himself in his presence, of confirming that I'm with you. So fast forward now to the Sunday before we go on our trip on September the 11th. The Sunday before, Pastor Eric preached a message about some of those things, what we're talking about, that those moments in your life where you don't feel God's presence, that he hasn't moved, that maybe you have, and there seems to be that distance between you and him. And he preached on that on the verse about draw near to me and I'll draw near to you. And I remember going to that altar that Sunday because I'd been going through one of those times. It was like, God, I don't feel your presence. Is there sin in my life that's not confessed? If so, show me. So you, sir, you have some to blame for this. So we get on the plane and we have an amazing trip, amazing 7 days. And I guess I should preface this too, is we left the Dothan airport on September the 11th, and they flagged my bag, and they always flag my bag because they've either got a knife or paper, something. And it's a kind of not a joke anymore, Faith gets frustrated with me, where they always pull my bag and they search it. And so it wasn't unusual for my bag to get pulled. So they pulled my bag in Dothan before we left to go to Mexico. And the guy didn't find anything. He searched it and he said, I think it's this, I had a bag of coins. He said, it's probably this bag of coins. And just stuck it back in and said, go on. I also believe in the sovereignty of God. And I believe that if God would have wanted him to find those coins or those magazines, that he would have. And I find comfort in that now, knowing that it's a plan. I didn't know that at the time, and it sure didn't feel like it. So we get through Dothan, and I don't blame Dothan. I mean, God knows what God's doing. God has a plan. But we got ready to leave on September the 17th. We got up at 4 in the morning, had to catch a 8 o'clock flight, had to be at the airport at 6:20. So it's early in the morning. We're going through customs, and there weren't a whole lot of people there. And I could see the lady at the x-ray booth. She was like, oh. And I could tell she was frustrated, and I didn't really know why. And the guy that's kind of running the TSA back there walks up to the screen, and then he walks back to me, and on his phone he says, bullet, bullet. And I was like, I thought he was looking at my water bottle that had a flip-up lid. And so I just passed it off, really. But they called the federales in, and they take me into the little side room, and he starts searching my bag. And the one thing I noticed that was different about the Mexican TSA is when that girl saw the screen, is he went up and took a picture of the screen with his phone. And so he took that phone into the search booth with the federale. So the federale, I mean, I've got a big backpack. There's pockets everywhere. It's my everyday carry. And so I really just didn't think any of it. And he couldn't find anything. So then he'd go back to the phone, and he'd look at the picture a little closer. And I even saw a glimpse of the picture. I was like, that does look a little funny. But it still didn't register to me what it was. Well, until he unzipped one of the little side pockets and pulled out these 2 clips with bullets in it. And I remembered right then, oh gosh, I put those in there a year and a half ago. And they were loaded. One had 5, one had 4. And I said, mucho problemo? He said, mucho problemo. And I didn't really know what that meant at that point. But it wasn't good. So one of the first persons I messaged was my brother-in-law. And I know a lot of you in here may know Bruce Burley. He's my brother-in-law. He's a bail bondsman. And I want you to remember Bruce's name, Bruce Burley. Bruce Burley is my my brother-in-law. And I called him first thinking that maybe Mexico has bail bonding, and he could bond me out. And he said, let me go check. I think the next call, obviously it was to Faith, and she was already talking to the embassy and trying to figure out what steps we need to take. But they went ahead and took me to the police station. And it was a little surprising. I think that they were scared in a lot of respects, so they didn't even handcuff me at first. They just put me in the truck, and we all rode to the police station. When I got there, and there was a lot of other police around, and I could tell they were just as nervous as I was because I'm an American, that they didn't want to do anything wrong, and they were just as cautious. But they went ahead and put handcuffs on me, put me in another vehicle, and took me to the courthouse, what it boiled down to. And after being there about 20 minutes, this guy walks around the corner and tells me he's an attorney and that he's on the approved list for the U.S. consulate, the U.S. embassy. And I thought it was kind of odd that you got here in 15 minutes. But, you know, he was an ambulance chaser. I'm sure he had people at the TSA that pick up the phone and, hey, we got one coming in. But he spoke English, and that's a plus in Mexico to have an attorney that's bilingual. So he starts talking to me and says, it's not good. Bullets are something that only the Mexican military can have. And the bullets that you have, I had some hollow points in it. He said that moves it up another level because those are more deadly. He said, so you're looking at 3 years, 10 months, and 2 days. Or we can maybe get you out for around $13,000. So I'm messaging Bruce and Faith, and they're all kind of in this group chat with my now attorney, who I didn't know from Adam's House Cat. And he said, but here's the deal. You've got to spend at least 48 hours in federal prison. Then we'll go to trial, and then we'll see what happens. But I think I can get it taken care of, $13,000. And so I go down to the solitary lockup. And fortunately, I was in solitary for the first 48 hours. I was in a room with 4 different cells. I was in a cell by myself for the first 48 hours. And you think, okay, that's a breath of fresh air, that's a relief. But when you hear those doors lock in a country where you don't speak their language, fear sets in. And I remember sitting there going, what have I done? I mean, I could not even think. I couldn't put together sentences. I was paralyzed. One thing that I'll say, and that I don't know that I share a lot, is they took my shoelaces out, they took my watches, they took all my jewelry, everything off, and they asked about a belt. Well, I didn't have a belt on. I had a pair of shorts on that had a drawstring. And I didn't intentionally not disclose it. I just said I don't have a belt, but I knew that had a drawstring. And I don't know if I didn't want him to keep it or take it because it wasn't really holding my shorts up because they fit, but it was an awareness that I may need that, and I don't know why. But I'll be honest with you, sitting in that solitary cell for 48 hours, the thought occurred to me to use the drawstring. I knew why they took them away from me. I knew why they wouldn't let you have shoelaces. I could not live in that environment. I didn't think. So the next 48 hours were long. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. They actually don't feed you. Your family is supposed to bring in food. Faith went and brought some snacks in, and I didn't have an appetite. That night, my attorney brought in McDonald's, Big Mac and fries, and it's not the same McDonald's as you get in the States. And I knew I needed to eat, so I did eat it, and it made me sick. And the toilet in there, I'm just going to be completely honest with you, you can't flush the toilet. They won't let you flush the toilet. They won't let you wash your hands. They control everything. So one of my first prayers to God is, are you with me? If you are, could you get him to flush the toilet? I mean, we say that laughingly, but that was a sincere prayer because I needed to know God was there. And that was an immediate need because the smell in these places is awful. And I remember the guard walked by that one night. He wasn't real pleasant, the first guy. And I said, baño, baño. I know about 5 Mexican words, and most of those aren't clean. But and he said, sí, and kept walking. Well, he didn't flush it all night long. So I'm in there for 48 hours, and, little things start to get your attention. The click of a gate or a door opening, because it's some distraction. They're coming in. What's it about? I knew I was going to be there for 48 hours, but it's just something to break up that thought process. Late that night, they brought a young kid in. I bet he was 15, 16 years old. And his mom came and met with him in a solitary jail cell, I guess. And when he came out, you guys, he was just an emotional wreck. I mean, he was sobbing. Just to the point he couldn't even breathe or catch his breath. He was almost, throwing up. And I couldn't think of prayers. I couldn't think of songs. I couldn't think of anything other than Jesus loves me. It's the only song I could sing. And I couldn't even hardly pray for this kid, but I knew I needed to. And I just I just paced the cell. Jesus, just in the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus, just in the name of Jesus. They finally came in and just left his door open so he could kind of walk the area in front of the cells, and he settled down. But it's amazing how my mind will shut down, and I couldn't form a sentence. It was almost scary and eerie that I couldn't capture a thought. Miss Barbara was asking me a minute ago if they made me do push-ups in there. And I said, no, I did do 50 on the floor one day just to try and break it, but then I had no motivation to do that. The guy the next day the guard was very accommodating. I could tell he had a different character about him. He tried to communicate with me through Google Translate. And it was, we got the message across, but they were short and sweet. But one of the things he said is, you will have your freedom. The judges have discretion here. I still didn't know what that meant. So 48 hours later, they take me to court, and they took me in one of those armored trucks. And I guess I'll never forget, and I didn't realize it at this time, but Faith came to visit me twice when I was there. And I went into that little solitary room. And I don't know that the first time was as daunting because it was fresh, but I know when she came in that second time, it had kind of settled in of the magnitude of what I may be looking at. I'm shackled. I'm shackled. And the thing that she says she remembered is the look on my face when I turned to leave. So she said that's something she can't get out of her head. So this was as hard on her as it was on me. That next morning, they took me to the courthouse, and I'm there with a lot of other people that are there for trial. And nobody gets in a hurry in Mexico, and I don't understand what they're saying. But they take us into a courtroom, and my attorney had told me how the process was going to go. And he had written down on a sheet of paper all the things that were going to have to happen. And I guess one thing that I completely missed is, as I'm praying for this kid in the cell back and forth, not knowing what to say, I get to the end of the cell one time and I look down and there's a feather on the bottom of the cell. I reached down and picked up the feather, put it in my pocket, and thought of my friend. Because what he also I didn't tell you earlier, is the significance of what the feather means. Because this person is always trying to find the meaning behind it. So if you'll Google the meaning of a feather, it has spiritual significance, and it means connection to the Creator. And so that was something that really resonated with me when I saw that feather. Like I said, I'm always looking. So I picked it up and I put it in my shorts. So when they're getting ready to take me to the courthouse, they're frisking me down, and the guard finds that feather in my little pocket, and it falls to the floor. Well, I asked him if I could reach down and pick it up, and he said, sir. So I reached down and picked it up and put it back in my pocket, and I took that with me. Those things matter. At least they do to me. Went through the court trial. The judge does not speak English. I'm looking at a translator on the board, and I know that I made sure that every time he was talking to me, even though I didn't understand him, I was looking at him. I was at least engaged in what I was giving him the respect. But my attorney kind of told me what I had to do, and he said, you've got to agree to accept the sentence of 3 years, 10 months, and 2 days. And I was just following blind. Yes, Your Honor. I then had to agree to waive my right to appeal. Yes, Your Honor. And we had to go through this litany of procedures. And my attorney kept saying, we've got to get to the plea bargain part of it. So apparently, the fine, if it's less than 4 years, if the penalty is less than 4 years, you can plea bargain. You can turn it into money, what it boils down to. So that was the conversation, is that I would plea bargain to pay them the fine of $5,000. And I still didn't understand what he's saying, and it wasn't being conveyed to me in a way that I could understand, because I had just waived my rights to appeal, agreed to a sentence, and at any moment I thought this judge could just slap the gavel and I'm done. And Faith in the back, she knew the procedure, but it was pretty scary until the judge finally got to the end and said, your country owes some of the burden in this. This should not have happened. We understand that it was a mistake, but your country should have caught this. But sorry, these are our laws, and you're subject to our laws no matter the reason. But when you leave here, after you pay restitution, we're not going to escort you to the airport. You'll be free to continue your vacation. Those are the words that they hung on. It's like, okay, if he's telling me I can leave and continue my vacation, we were done with vacation, I'm going home. I'm done with vacation. But that was the only thing that I said, okay. And he said, just be patient with us. So my attorney says, you're going to have to go to the county jail and process in and process out. My attorney said 2 hours. The guards that were taking me said, 3 to 4. So I get there, they change my clothes. I thought I'm there for 2 hours. They make me change into their brown sweatpants and shirt, go through pictures and fingerprints, process me in, and then they take me to this, basically it's a pole barn with 4 different cells. And you guys have probably all seen this on the news where there's people, just kind of hanging out in the bars and it's full of people. And the guy walks up to cell number 2. And I thought, oh, he's about to put me in there. And so he unlocks the door and puts me in this cell with 20 other Mexicans. And I don't speak any English. And, oh, yeah, that too. I didn't speak any English at that point. I couldn't speak at all. So he puts me in there, and I go kind of sit down on this. It's just a concrete floor. It's a 20 by 20 room. There's a little half wall in the corner where the toilet's kind of at. And so I sit down on this concrete bench and just kind of, I'm the topic of conversation, obviously. And there's a guy beside me that says, you need to take a shower. And I was like, I'm good. I had one 3 days ago. I'm good. And about that time, this other guy walks up to me and said, hey, nothing personal. This is mandatory. It's how we run our cell. Everybody that comes in here, it's mandatory that they take a shower. And I thought, you're speaking English. And he said, yeah. And so he's from New Mexico. He's Mexican, but he grew up in New Mexico. So he's fluent. So you guys, that in itself is unheard of in Mexico prison, that I've got a guy in there that speaks fluent English, better than I do. And so he explains to me that, look, this is just the way we run our cell. You got to go over here behind this wall, and you got to dip water out of a cistern that they pump water in, and you got to pour it over yourself. And then the water that's kind of collected on the floor because it doesn't drain, you have to dip that water up and pour it in the toilet, because that's the only thing that will flush the toilet is the gravity. Oh, that's a Roomba. So anyway, so I do what they asked me to do, and I went over there. And you can keep your skivvies on. Some of them didn't. And actually it felt pretty good because it's 90 degrees in here. There's no movement. There's no circulating air. So it actually felt good. So I went and sat back down, and the guy said, the guy that spoke English came up to me and said, you don't have to do this, but it would be an expression of goodwill and charity if you would donate your tennis shoes. And I had just bought a brand new pair of Brooks tennis shoes, paid $160 for them. And I thought, okay, no big deal. Can I do it when I leave in 2 hours? He said, no, that's not going to work either, because the guards can't see that happen. It's forbidden. So you got to do it now. Okay, so I gave the guy that I now know ran that cell my shoes, and they gave me some pristine flip-flops they were so awful because they've been trudging around and all that, and they were not the rubber ones that I would have loved rubber ones, but they had that cloth and leather kind of on them that just kind of held the gunk. But I had somebody that could at least talk to me. They were just feeding them lunch when I got there, and it consisted of a pot of lentil beans and tortillas. That was their lunch and their dinner. And the guy told me that for breakfast they get bread and coffee, and that's it. unless you have family that brings in food, or at least you have money on the commissary. There was like a kitchen that you could, because there was one guy in there that I did see get a hamburger. And it was interesting that nobody bothered him for that. He went and sat down and ate his hamburger. And it's like they respected that. But some other guys came in later on from court. They had a thing of beans, and they all shared that. So food was a scarcity there. I still had not eaten other than that Big Mac and French fries and 2 protein bars. And I still didn't want to eat for several reasons. But this guy sat beside me and talked to me for what I thought was going to be 2 hours, what I thought was going to be 3 or 4 hours, for 11 hours. He sat beside me and encouraged me and poured into me for 11 hours. And on his back, he had a big tattoo of Mother Mary. So that opened up the conversation. I shared my story of recovery. I shared my faith. And then he shared his, that he had spent 5 years in Tijuana at a Victory Recovery Center, and then left and went to the church and was working in the church, never sober, but was still working there. And he said, I've been running for God for a long time. And, we both came to the understanding that he was there for me and I was there for him. And y'all, he talked to me to the point that I said to myself, I wish you would just shut up. Just hush. I'm trying to freak out over here and you just keep talking. And he just kept talking. But I'm so thankful for it. He talked to me about everything from Forrest Gump movies to how to make jambalaya. Do you use shrimp in jambalaya? I was like, crawfish? I don't know. Talked about Hostess apple pies and the kind you used to get that had the red writing on it. You drink it with a Coca-Cola. It was ad nauseum. But he knew what he was doing. He was trying, you're going to get out of here. You're going to hear the click of that gate. The guards are going to come in. You're going to get out. If they're telling you you're going to get out, it may be 9 o'clock. They take people to court. You guys, the whole time, this guy's just pouring into me. And so I took another shower just because that was the only relief in there that was hot. And I went back and sat down. And I could always tell they were talking about me. But I didn't know what they were saying. But I knew a few words, like I said earlier, and not all of them were clean. And I knew what some of them were. And so after taking that second shower, this one guy looks at me and says, "Nice chichas." I was like, "What?" He said, "Nice chichas." And so basically he was saying I had nice breasts. That's not what you want to hear in a Mexican prison. Yeah. And I could tell from my friend beside me that there were conversations that made him uncomfortable because his countenance would change and he wouldn't tell me what they were saying, but I could tell it made him uncomfortable. So during our conversations, he said, "Look, my fine is only $300, but I got $150 on my debit card and it's over at the police station. And my ex-wife in New Mexico won't answer the phone." And so the conversation came up that, look, when I get out of here, I'll reach out to your ex-wife. I'll see if she'll just answer the phone. So he gave me her number. Her name was Kim. And I said, "Well, what's your name?" And he said his name was Armando Puente. And I said, "I'll never remember that." And he said, "Well, last name Puente means bridges." I said, "Okay, I got that." And so he wrote her name, her phone number down. And, the floor is covered with people. It's 8, 9 o'clock at night. I don't have a watch. But it's getting late, and there's hollering going back and forth between all these cells. And I asked him, I said, "Does this ever stop?" He said, "No, it's all night long." He said, "This cell may settle down, but that one's not." And it's just back and forth. So it just goes on and on. And there was nowhere for me to lay down. But the guards came up to do a cell search. So everybody got up, and after it settled down, I found a spot on the floor. And I said, well, before that, I said, where do I lay down? Because I don't want to take somebody else's spot and be in trouble. He said, "You can have my spot in the corner." So he was willing to give me his spot. And then when I finally found a spot to lay down, the only thing to fan with was like Tupperware lids. And I said, "Is there a Tupperware lid?" He said, "Here, take mine." So he gave me his Tupperware lid. So I'm laying on the concrete floor, a Coca-Cola bottle full of water as my pillow, and just fanning myself to try and stay cool. And I mean, you're side by side to these people, and my feet are touching somebody else's head. Well, the guards come around. It's about 10 o'clock that night, and it's roll call or name, roll whatever, cell check. And so the guy, Armando, says, "Hey, when they call your name, raise up or say I'm here." Well, they didn't call my name. They said Gringo, so they just called me white boy basically. And so he said, "They're calling you out, so go out." So I walk out, and they took two other guys out. And so I'm leaning up against the cistern looking at our cell, just sitting there. Well, then some more guards come by, and they make us turn around and face away. And then they go to the next cell, and they pull a guy out. And you guys, I didn't see anything, but they commenced to whipping this man's tail right there behind us. I mean, to the point that one of the guards came up and laid down a broomstick that had been broken in front of us, where obviously they were beating him with a broomstick. And so my only thought was, we're next. And fortunately, we were just being escorted out. It just happened to be, and Armando did tell me that, said, if you're here and the guards, they will tell you, if you leave and get out and you come back, we're whipping your tail. That's not exactly what he said, but that's what he meant. And so I don't know if that's what happened, because everybody will ask me, what were they doing it for? I was like, I didn't ask. I just thought I was next. But fortunately, we went to an exit area where you talk to a visitor, and my only thought, it's dark, it's late at night, and my wife is about to come up here and raise Cain about why I'm not out yet. And this is not a place that you want your wife. It's to the point, I'll get to that in a minute, but and then I thought, okay, then it's my attorney coming in here, and my attorney's going to tell me there's a delay, there's a hiccup, you got to stay. But fortunately, I was able to sign and get out. So I got out at 10:30 that Thursday night, got to the hotel. The next day, we had to go get my backpack and other stuff. And so I'm telling my attorney, look, I really feel like I owe this guy a debt of gratitude. I need to see what I can do to help get him out. Well, his name, he said, what's his name? And I said, it's Armando Puente. And he's both about the same time, we both said Puente means bridges. And he said, well, that's pretty interesting because Armando here means building. So his name, you guys, is Building Bridges. That's another butterfly. That's another feather. That's another opportunity for God to say, I'm here. I'm present. So I told him that I would reach out to his ex-wife. I get her on the phone in the Atlanta airport after, and going through customs again, I was a nervous wreck, so was Faith. We just got to get out of here. We got to get on the plane. We got to get to Atlanta. But I got a hold of her in Atlanta, and they're divorced, they're estranged, but she's a godly woman. She's a praying woman. She had been praying for Mondo for a long time. Oh, thank you. So we start this conversation back and forth about how to get him out, how to help him. We've been talking every day. She sent me a text a few minutes ago because there's public defenders that are involved for him. My attorney's trying to help out. So we've been going back and forth, just trying to, and it's corruption to the 10th. The public defender wanted us to wire $2,500 to the victim who is the landowner that he may have stole something from. And my attorney said, don't wire money to anybody, not even the public defender. So we've been going back and forth for these 2 weeks now. Still can't get him out. So Saturday before the Alabama game, I'm messaging her, excuse me, and I said, are you on social media? So we've been talking for a week to 10 days, and she said yes. And so I sent her a picture of my Facebook profile, and then she sends me a friend request. So do y'all remember my brother-in-law's name? Bruce Burley. My sister's name is Kim. Well, this lady sends me her Facebook friend request, and her name is Kim Burley. You know, what are the odds of that? The same name as my sister. And y'all, I've been praying for my sister and her family for a long time. I don't know where she's at spiritually, but I'm going to have a conversation. I called her right then and said, you're not going to believe this lady's name. It's Kim Burley. But I need to have a conversation with her to the point of saying, do you realize that the God of the universe just called you by name? That's strong, people. You can't make that up. And I love when God gives me something that says you can't make this up. You can't reproduce this. Because it removes a lot of doubt for me, because I'll probably be doubting again tomorrow. But those are the treasures that I need to hold on to. I was listening to something just yesterday, and it was Billy Graham. And Billy Graham was saying that he was telling his mom that, Mom, I feel like that God's distant. He's not with me. I don't feel his presence. And he said, his mama said, son, you have accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior. You cannot base your faith on your feelings. It's those moments that he's probably closer to you than he ever is. Find faith in your thoughts and your faith and not your feelings. And so that's what I would leave to encourage you. Look for God in everything, in every conversation. Look for the feathers, the butterflies. I guarantee you that God's speaking to you in some way, shape, or form. And he wants to draw you in because we often wander. So thank y'all for allowing me to share. So I'm on a company car yesterday because my wife wanted me to go pick up a mirror. So I pick up the company car because it'll fit in the van. I've never been in this van before. I'm leaving the bus barn in this van, and I don't even know where the air conditioner's at, but I get the air conditioner on, and I get this song pops into my head, and I'm sure James knows it. It's "I Love You, Lord," and those are the lyrics that popped into my head. And I said, I'm going to turn the radio on. Couldn't find the dial. I figured it out, turned on the radio, turned it to 94.3. The volume's not down. And when I turned the volume up, the very first words that come out of that radio are, I love you, Lord.
Just the goodness of God.
Yeah. I mean, and I'd love for you to sing that as we leave. Is that asking too much?
I know someone that can help me.
Hasty?
Hey, I love to put them on the spot. That's no problem. I think, Angie, you're the one he was talking about. All right. Thank you, Todd, for sharing. Let's stand up. We'll let this be our benediction.
I've been held in your hands from the moment that I wake up until I lay my head. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Thank y'all. God bless y'all for coming. Y'all have a great night. See you on Sunday. Huh? Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. We need volunteers. Muscles is what we need. We have to take that piano off the stage. And so if you are strong enough to help out, just make your way down front. All right, guys, come on. Hey, good job.
They're locked. Did you unlock them? They do lock.
They bolted to the dolly, so it should just come.
Aaron, so I guess the other one passed the test. Did you tell them to do this? Next week Sunday? This needs to be taped. Camera. Where's your camera? Where's your phone? Get your phone, camera.
I got one.
Good.
That was good. I wanted to hear Todd's
Yeah, I
thing.
hate we missed it.
Well, and then he asked us to ask James to sing "Goodness of God," and then James says, "I know somebody that can help me," so that worked out good too.
I don't think that's.
What'd you say?
Does that piano fit through those doors?
No, I don't know what they're gonna do.
They're supposed to be moving it to that room.
Then I don't know. I don't know how you move that.
I don't either.
But all right, ma'am.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if